Welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the search functions in the Greek New Testament Study app. And to get to the search page, you use the navigation bar here at the bottom and click on the search icon. It's lit up blue, so we're on the search screen. Now I'm showing this to you on an Android emulator. This is emulating a Google Pixel 6, but by using an emulator, you can see my cursor. You can see where I'm clicking. So here we are in the search page, and right here at the top, we need to make a couple decisions. First, we need to decide, what are we looking for? Do we want to look for Greek words, Greek forms, or English definitions? English definitions is probably pretty self-explanatory. You're searching for in the definition of words. The difference between words and forms in Greek is that words are dictionary words. That's all it will search is the dictionary word, whereas forms will search any possible form that word appears in. So for instance, imagine the word logos. If you type in logos, then that will pull it up in the Greek words because that's the dictionary entry for the word. We say logos. But if you were to type in logon, that won't appear in words because logon's not a dictionary entry. It's the accusative singular of the word logos. In Greek forms, however, it would pull up logon. Greek forms would also pull up logos because, of course, that's the nominative singular form. That's what we use for the dictionary forms. So we need to decide if we're searching in Greek words, Greek forms, or English definitions. I'll leave it at Greek words for the moment. And then you've got to decide where in the text you want to look for. Do you want to search for the beginning, anywhere, ends with, or a wildcard search? And we'll talk about wildcard searches in a minute. That allows you to search for pretty much anything you want anywhere. Let's start out with begins with, and let's use the classic Greek verb luo. Now notice, as soon as I click here into the search bar, my keyboard comes up in this mobile app, but of course my keyboard is English. Now, if you have a Greek keyboard and want to type in it, absolutely feel free. That will work fine. But if all you have is an English keyboard, then you can simply type and the letters will be transliterated. So watch. I'm going to type an L and I'm going to get a lambda. I'm going to type a U and I'm going to get an ypsilon. I'm going to type a W and I'm going to get an omega. And there it is, luo. It pulls it up. Luo, it turns out, is the only word in the Greek New Testament that begins with these three letters, lambda, upsilon, omega. But let's change that. Let's look at ends with, because as you probably know, luo appears in some different compounds. If we choose endless, well, get a load of this. There's actually quite a number of words that end in luo. There's analuo, apoluo, diakoluo. Well, that's not a compound, is it? Kappa omega, that's not a compound. This comes from the word koluo, which has nothing to do with luo, but all the rest of these do. And we could also, if we wanted, click on anywhere, and we'll find, hey, there's actually one more. Here's the destroyer, apoluon. There it is, lambda, upsilon, omega. Those three letters appearing anywhere. So with this, you can find all the various dictionary words you want. Now, what happens when you don't have a dictionary word? For instance, imagine aelthone. As you'll notice, if I type this in, then that doesn't pull anything up because there's no word that has a dictionary entry, aelthone. You'll notice, by the way, I'm not typing any diacritics. The program will find the words without diacritics. Aelthone isn't a dictionary word. If you remember back to your Greek early verbs, aelthone is the second aorist of the verb erchomai. So we're not going to find it under Greek words. However, let's change appear anywhere to begins with, and let's change Greek words to Greek forms. Now it pulls it up. Erchomai. The program knows that aelthone is part of erchomai, that it's one of the forms of erchomai, and this is what it pulls up. And just like we did with luo, where we wanted to know, what words end in luo, those will probably be compounds. Let's change this to ends with. And sure enough, we find a whole bunch of compounds of erchomai. Did you notice right there how I got rid of my cursor? I got rid of my keyboard, I mean. When the cursor is up here, then, of course, you need a keyboard to type in, but you can get rid of it anytime you want. Just click and drag just a little bit here, and it'll drop your keyboard, so now you can see all these and drag through them. I'm going to change this to appears anywhere just to see. Yeah, actually, it turns out that pulls up, I think that pulls up another one. But Greek forms will allow you to search for forms of words. So like we said, logon, well, that would be found under a form. It wouldn't be found under a dictionary word. Finally, let's look at English definitions. You'll notice if we do that, your text options disappear. You can't do beginning, end, anything like that. You can just type in there, and you'll also notice as we type, we get English letters, because of course that's what you're looking for. We're looking for the word strong anywhere it appears. And notice, here it is. In all of these definitions, there's going to be strong somewhere. Also stronger, because of course that has strong. In fact, let's remove a couple and just make STRO, and you'll notice now we get destroy. There's STRO in destroy. In destroyer, oh, lustrous, there it is, STRO. So anything you type in English, it's going to search for those particular letters anywhere in the definition. You'll also notice that in our searching, I'm going to drop my keyboard here, this little icon tells you that we're searching alphabetically. So A to Z, of course, in Greek words, that would be alpha to omega. But we start here with a word that begins with alpha, and we go up here. What's our final word? Well, it begins with phi. But you can click on this and change it. You could do Greek word descending, meaning we're going to start at the top of the alphabet and move all the way back down to the beginning. Or you could do it by count. You can do count ascending, meaning we'll start with the lowest number and move all the way to the highest. Or you can do count descending. 9 down to 1. We start with the highest number and move down to the lowest. I think alphabetical works for me at the moment. So here we are. Here's alphabetical. This is how you search for words, for forms, and for definitions of words. Now, finally, let's go back to Greek words, and let's change this to the wildcard search. The wildcard search allows you to search on pretty much any combination. So imagine that you want to search for me verbs. So I'm going to type in me, and I'm going to change this to say ends with. So here we are. Here's all of these verbs that end in me. Now, what if we just wanted to know the verbs that begin with ana, the me verbs that begin with ana? So we want to begin with alpha nu, because we know the second alpha can disappear in some cases, and we want to end with me. Well, you can't do that, can you? With begins with, appears anywhere, or ends with. But we can do that with a wildcard search. A wildcard search allows you to define where you want the wildcards to appear. So when we say begins with, what we're really saying is mu iota anything. And notice all these words begin with mu iota, and then it's wildcard. It's the end. We don't care what happens at the end. Ends with goes the other way around. We're saying anything can be here. It can be totally wild. It's just got to end with mu iota. Appears anywhere means there's got to be a mu iota somewhere. Could be at the beginning, could be at the end, somewhere in it. In a wildcard search, you decide that. So you use the question mark as your wildcard. So let's create a wildcard search that would do the same thing as begins with. It would have mu, it would have iota, and then I'm going to add a question mark to the end. And that's going to bring up all the same words that came up, these 21 matches. That's all the same as if I'd said begins with. It's doing the same thing. Let's make a wildcard search for appears anywhere. How would we do that? Well, we'll add a question mark to the beginning. So now we've got the same as ends with, and we'll put a question mark at the end. So here we are. We've created the same search as appears anywhere, but we've had to do it a little more complicatedly. Now, remember what we said? We wanted to find all the ones that began with an a. So I'm going to put an alpha and a nu, a wildcard, and me at the end. I'm going to drop my screen here so you can see. And sure enough, all these begin with alpha nu, and all of them end with me. So this allows you to form any kind of search you want. You can use as many wildcards as you want. But you have to remember, the program isn't going to add any for you like it does when you do the other searches. You've got to put wildcards. For instance, if we wanted to find out if there was anything that had an anything mi in it, we could do this. And so, yeah, it turns out, look, anemizomai. Well, it only appears one time in the New Testament. I'm not very familiar with it. But it begins with alpha nu. It's got a mu iota in it. So it matches, in this case, the wild card at the beginning is nothing. Then the wild card in the middle. So you can do any, however complicated searches as you want. There's one other wild card you probably want to know about. Imagine that we are doing our me verb search, but instead of searching for a na at the beginning, we want to search for a pa. We'll get rid of the omicron there. Wild card me. So sure enough, here we get all the me verbs that begin either with a pa, with the omicron, or just op, because we remember that the omicron drops out before other vowels. But you may also remember that a pa will turn into alpha phi if there's a rough breathing. So we've got these 7 here. Let's change this to a phi. Oh, and you notice there's 2 more. Well, you could find it this way by working your way through it. But the program also has a way that you can alternate letters, and that's to use the brackets. So I'm going to put brackets here, and then inside the brackets, I'm going to put the pi and the phi. Notice, now we get all the ones that begin with alpha pi, but we also get the ones that begin alpha phi. So the brackets say to the program, hey, search for each of these individually. Search for alpha pi anything mu iota, then search for alpha phi anything mu iota. It will go through and search for all those, and you can add as many as you want. We could add a tau and a gamma. Now, it won't change anything because there's nothing that begins alpha tau anything me. There's nothing that begins alpha gamma anything me, but alpha pi and alpha phi, both of those do pull up all of these. So using the brackets allows you to do a little alternation to search for some different possible combinations. You can only use brackets in one place. And if you noticed, when I went through and did this without brackets, I actually got an error because I'm searching for alpha nothing, anything, mu iota. And of course, the database isn't going to pull up alpha nothing, anything. But as soon as I put something in there, then it pulls it back up again. If you were to use brackets in other places, it won't find anything because it can't do the alternation multiple times. But you can use them once to find any various alternations that you want. So I find the search page to be one of my favorite pages here in the program. It allows me to search for things and look for things and try and figure out what's happening. Once you find the word, then there's the question of what you want to do with it. You notice right now it says open in details here in blue. That means if I click on these, it's going to go to that word. So let's go to apodidomi. We'll click on this line, and it takes us to the detail page for that word. If that doesn't look common to you, go back and check out the details video. I can click the back arrow, or I could click on the search icon down here. But you can click on this blue line here, and it will change. So for instance, if you click once, it says add all to vocabulary. And if you click again, it says add to vocabulary. So let's click through. Once is open in details. Add all to vocabulary. That means any of these, I click anywhere in here, watch what happens. All words have now been added. So if we were in vocabulary and I was making a new vocabulary list, and if this doesn't look familiar to you, then check out the video on making vocabulary lists. Here they all are. here's all the words that we did, that we just looked at. They've all been added. And if I was to remove them, and I'll go back to the search page, and I'll click once to add all, click add again. This is just the same as what we've done in Open in Details. If you remember, we could add a word vocabulary list this way. Well, you can also add it here. If you click to add all to add to vocabulary, I can say, you know what? I want this one, I want this one, I want this one, and this one. Now, when we go back to our vocabulary and we go to make a new vocabulary list, there they are. There's the one we added from the details page. There's the 4 we added. And then, again, if you don't know about this, go and check out the video on making new vocabulary lists. We can add all those. We could save them. I'm not going to do this right now because I don't want them, but you get the idea. The search function not only allows you to find these various words, but it allows you to look at the details or to add them to a vocabulary list if you're making a special vocabulary list. One last thing I want to tell you about before we finish. As you're typing along, most of these letters I think would be pretty self-explanatory. A gets you an alpha, B gets you a beta, G gets you a gamma. You get the idea. But what about theta? Where's that? What about eta? What about xi? If you're ever wondering, instead of doing this kind of thing and just going through and clicking on letters until you find it, click the $sign. The $sign will pull up the map. This shows you what English letter on the right you need to type to get out the Greek letter on the left. So again, pretty self-explanatory, but if you want an eta, you type an H. If you want a theta, you type a Q. If you want a xi, you type a C. If you want a psi, you can type a J or a Y. To get out a new, you can use the English N, or you can also use the English V, since that's what it looks like. And lots of times in my English keyboard, I type a V because I see it as the Greek N. So anytime you wonder, you're not sure, you can just click the $sign to bring up this map, then click on the map to make it go away. So I hope you enjoy the search function as much as I do. I find it to be one of the most helpful parts in learning how all these words fit together in the Greek New Testament.